In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council was in session. The Grand Chamber was filled with representatives from many different species, each with their own unique appearance and culture. They had gathered to discuss a matter that was becoming increasingly urgent: the rapid expansion of humanity. The room was quiet as the council's president, a tall and elegant being named Ildren, stood at the front. His skin shimmered like polished metal, and his eyes were deep pools of wisdom. He had seen many wars and many empires rise and fall, but today his voice carried an unusual weight. He spoke slowly, carefully, as he addressed the assembly. "We are gathered here today to discuss a growing concern," Ildren began. "The humans, who have long been confined to their own solar system, have begun to venture beyond. Their technology is advancing quickly, and their ships now travel to distant systems. We cannot ignore this development any longer." A murmur of concern swept through the chamber. Representatives of various species exchanged uneasy glances. Among them were the Zorath, a peaceful race of giant floating beings, and the Char, a fierce, battle-hardened species known for their warlike culture. Each of them had their own reasons for being wary of humanity's rise, but none had spoken out yet. Ildren continued. "It is no longer a matter of if the humans will become a threat, but when. We must act before it is too late." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some members agreed with Ildren, their voices rising in alarm, but others, like the representative from the Iskari, a sleek amphibious species, were not so sure. "We've dealt with this issue before," said the Iskari ambassador, a tall figure with translucent blue skin. "Humans are unpredictable, yes, but they are also a young race. They are still learning, still evolving. There is no need to make rash decisions. We should engage with them, offer guidance, and see if they are capable of peace." The room fell, silent as the Iskari spoke. Some of the other members nodded in agreement. They had seen the humans make great strides in their short time among the stars. Some believed that if given the right direction, humanity could become an ally, a partner in the galaxy's great web of cooperation. But not everyone was convinced. The Taikari, a large horned species known for their military might, were more skeptical. A representative, a muscular being with crimson scales, stood up. "The humans may be young, but they are dangerous," the Taikari ambassador declared, his voice low and menacing. "I have seen their kind in action. They are reckless. If we do not act, they will not hesitate to strike first. Their history is filled with war, conflict, and conquest. Why should we trust them now?" The debate grew louder as more voices joined in. The Char, ever ready for battle, agreed with the Taikari. They had seen the humans rise to power, and they knew that humans valued strength above all else. To the Char, peace was an illusion, something that could only be achieved through dominance. Duran raised his hand, calling for silence. His face was grim. "The question we must answer is not whether humans can be trusted, but whether we can afford to ignore them. Their technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate. Their ships now travel faster than we ever thought possible. If we wait too long, we may find ourselves facing them as enemies." The tension in the room was palpable. The council was split. Some argued for caution, wanting to give humanity a chance to prove themselves, while others feared that such a chance would be wasted. Finally, the representative from the Zorath, a gentle and wise species known for their neutrality, spoke. "Understand the fears of many of you. The humans are unpredictable, yes, but they are also resourceful, determined, and capable of great acts of kindness. We cannot condemn an entire species based on the actions of a few. We must give them the opportunity to choose their path." Zorath's words hung in the air. For a moment, the room was quiet as the council members considered the possibilities. Would they act against humanity now, or would they allow the humans to chart their own course? It was a difficult decision, one that would shape the future of the galaxy. "I propose a compromise," Ildren said, breaking the silence. "Let us send ambassadors to the humans. Let us offer them a chance. To prove their intentions, if they seek peace, we will welcome them. But if they show signs of aggression, we will take swift action." The choice will be theirs. The room fell quiet as the council members considered this. It was a cautious approach, one that would give humanity a chance while still allowing the galaxy to prepare for any potential threat. After a long pause, the Ascari ambassador nodded in agreement. "I support this plan," she said. "Let us give them a chance." And so, the vote was cast. The Galactic Council decided to send ambassadors to humanity, offering them a chance to prove their worth. It was a decision that would soon prove to be a critical mistake. As the meeting adjourned, Ildren watched the representatives leave. His heart was heavy. He knew that the decision they had made today might come back to haunt them. The council had given the humans a chance, but in doing so, they had also given them the freedom to choose their own path that perhaps would lead to war. But for now, the galaxy was still at peace. As fragile as it was, would remain for only a little while longer. The decision had been made, and the ambassadors were sent. In the vastness of space, the humans continued their rapid exploration of the stars. Unaware of the heated discussions taking place in the Galactic Council, human ships, sleek and efficient, had already made their mark on several neighboring systems. Some species, like the peaceful Ander, welcomed the new arrivals with open arms, eager to trade knowledge and resources. Others, however, remained cautious, unsure of what the humans truly wanted. On Earth, the leaders of the United Earth Federation had received the invitation to meet with the Galactic Council. It was a momentous occasion, the first time that humans had been called to the table of galactic diplomacy. General William Bill Carter, a respected figure within the Federation, was chosen as the ambassador for humanity. With a reputation for his calm demeanor and strategic mind, he was the perfect representative. General Carter stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship, the Unity watching as the stars streaked past. His mission was clear: to show the galaxy that humanity was ready to be a part of the greater community. But he knew that his task would not be easy. Many of the alien races had only heard of humans in whispers, often depicted as violent or unpredictable. He had to prove them wrong. "Approaching the Ander system, sir," reported his navigator, a young officer named Lieutenant Sarah Daniels. Her voice was steady, but Carter could sense the tension in her words. "The eyes of the galaxy were on them." "Understood," Carter replied, his tone calm. "Prepare for communication." The ship's communications officer, a man named Jacob, tapped a few buttons and brought up a holographic image of the Ander ambassador. The alien stood tall, with smooth, iridescent skin that shimmered in the light. His features were humanoid, but his eyes were large and dark, conveying a sense of wisdom beyond measure. "Welcome, General Carter," the Ander ambassador said, his voice smooth and melodic. "It is a great honor to make contact with your species." Carter nodded, offering a respectful smile. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We are eager to establish peaceful relations and explore opportunities for cooperation." The conversation went smoothly, with Carter carefully laying out humanity's goals for peaceful exploration and collaboration. The Ander were open to the idea, and the meeting ended with a promise to continue discussions and explore trade routes and technological exchange. For a moment, Carter allowed himself a sigh of relief. It seemed like the first step had been taken without incident. However, not all species were so willing to extend a hand of peace as the Unity moved through the stars. Heading towards their next stop, the Taikari fleet came into view. The Taikari had a reputation for being warriors, their massive ships known for their firepower and ruthlessness. They had watched the humans with growing concern, unsure of what to make of the new arrivals. The humans' swift rise through the stars had not gone unnoticed by the Taikari military. General Carter knew that the next meeting would be far more difficult. The Taikari did not trust Izali, and their respect had to be earned on the battlefield. Carter prepared himself for a tense encounter. He had been briefed on the Taikari culture, and he knew that they valued strength above all else. He had to show them that humanity was capable of standing tall, not just in diplomacy, but in defense as well. The Unity dropped out of warp and entered the Taikari system. The Taikari fleet was waiting for them, their ships looming like giants in the void. The human crew exchanged nervous glances, but Carter remained calm. This was the moment he had been preparing for. "General, we're being hailed," Lieutenant Daniels said, her voice tight with anticipation. "Put it through," Carter replied. A hologram of a towering Taikari appeared before him. The ambassador's skin was a deep red, and his horns curled menacingly. From his brow, his eyes glowed with a fierce light, and his presence seemed to fill the entire room. "You stand before the Taikari," the ambassador rumbled. "We have heard much of your kind. Tell me, human, what is it that you seek in our space?" Carter held the Taikari's gaze, refusing to look away. "We seek peace, Ambassador. We seek cooperation, trade, and the opportunity to share knowledge. We come with no intention of harm." The Taikar ambassador was silent for a long moment, studying Carter with suspicion. Finally, he spoke. "Peace. You ask for peace, yet your species is born of conflict. The history of your kind is filled with war, strife, and bloodshed. What makes you think we should trust you?" Carter's mind raced, but his voice remained steady. "We are not the same as we once were. Humanity has learned from its mistakes. We now seek to build, not destroy." The ambassador's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Carter thought the meeting might end in violence, but the Taikari leader merely nodded. "We will see if your actions match your words, human. We will give you the chance to prove yourselves." And with that, the meeting ended. It was a cautious agreement, but it was progress. The Taikari had agreed to a temporary truce, though their mistrust of humanity remained clear. Carter knew that. This was only the beginning. The next steps would be crucial, as the Unity moved on to the next system. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that the Taikari were not the only ones watching. There were other races, more powerful and secretive, who had their own opinions about humanity's rise. The Galactic Council may have thought they had time, but Carter knew that every step humanity took in space brought them closer to a reckoning. Across the galaxy, the warning signs were already flashing. Humanity's presence was spreading, and not everyone was as willing to embrace them as the Ander had been. As the humans ventured deeper into the stars, they would face challenges that would test their resolve, their strength, and their ability to work with others. But one thing was certain. Humanity was not turning back. The future was uncertain. But the Federation would not let fear guide their way. They had come this far. Now, they had to prove that they belonged in the galaxy's future, and soon. The rest of the galaxy would learn that ignoring humanity's potential was a mistake that could never be undone. The Unity continued its journey through the galaxy, leaving behind the cautious yet cordial relations with the Yonder and the tense meeting with the Taikari. Despite the positive steps forward, there was an uneasy feeling that hung over General. Carter and his crew had met two very different alien races, each with their own opinions about humanity. But both had left them with a warning. Humanity was still an unknown. Factor in the galaxy, the next system on their path was the Talarian system, home to the Talar, a technologically advanced and reclusive species. The Talar were known for their neutral stance in galactic affairs, rarely engaging with other species, unless absolutely necessary. Carter had heard much about them, and he knew that they were one of the most influential races in the galaxy. They were to truly prove humanity's place among the stars. Gaining the trust of the Talar would be crucial. As the Unity entered the Talarian system, Carter and his officers prepared for their next diplomatic encounter. Lieutenant Daniels and Lieutenant Jacob, the communications officer, worked together to establish contact with the Talar government. They had received no invitation for a formal meeting, and Carter knew that the Talar might not be as open to diplomacy as the Ander or Taikari had been. "General, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant Daniels announced. Her voice was steady, but Carter could hear the tension beneath it. The Talar were known for their sharp minds and calculated decisions. The last thing they wanted was to appear weak or unprepared. "Put it through," Carter replied, steeling himself for the unknown. The screen flickered to life, and an image of a Tala appeared. The Talar were tall beings, their skin shimmering with a silvery glow. Their eyes, deep and thoughtful, conveyed an aura of intelligence. The Tala representative's voice was calm, almost disinterested. "Human ship, you have entered our system without prior authorization. State your intentions," the Talar ambassador said, his tone flat and emotionless. General Carter felt a knot form in his stomach, but he remained composed. "Ambassador, we are here to establish peaceful relations and discuss trade opportunities. The Federation seeks cooperation, not conflict." The Talar ambassador studied Carter for a long moment. The silence was thick with unspoken judgment. Finally, he spoke again. "You speak of peace, human, but your species has a history of violence and war. Your very presence in this system is a disruption. What assurance do we have that you will not bring conflict to our doorstep?" Carter's mind raced. He knew the Talar had every right to be cautious. Humanity had only recently spread beyond its own solar system, and their reputation had not yet been fully earned. But Carter also knew that this was the moment to prove that humanity had changed. "We are not here to disrupt," Carter replied, his voice steady. "We are here to build. Our history may have been marked by conflict, but we have learned from it. We have the strength to protect, but we also have the wisdom to seek peace." The Talar ambassador's gaze never wavered. "Your words are empty without action. You must prove your intentions. Human, do not trust easily." Without another word, the Talar ambassador ended the transmission. Carter stood in silence, staring. At the blank screen, the room was quiet as the crew waited for his next move. "They don't trust us, General," Lieutenant Daniel said softly, breaking the silence. "They want proof. How do we give them that?" Carter's mind was working quickly. "We offer them a demonstration," he said after a moment. "We show them that we are capable of peace, but also capable of defending what we value." The decision was made. Carter ordered the Unity to perform a series of peaceful maneuvers in front of the Talarian sensors, showing off their ship's agility and precision. It wasn't a military demonstration. It was a show of humanity's control and restraint. The Talar would see that humanity was not just another race to be feared, but one that could coexist with others. As the ship performed its maneuvers, the crew of the Unity held their breath, waiting for any response from the Talar. The tension was unbearable. Minutes passed, and then an unexpected message came through. "Human ship, you have shown us your capabilities," the Talar ambassador's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "It is not enough to earn our trust, but it is a start. We will consider your proposal for peace." Carter allowed himself a small sigh of relief. This was the first step, but he knew there was still much work to be done. The Talar might not have fully accepted humanity, but they hadn't rejected them either. That was something. However, as the Unity moved on to the next system, the atmosphere remained tense. While the Talar had given them a chance, other species had taken notice of humanity's growing influence. Among them were the Velzari, a technologically advanced race known for their sharp intellect and cunning nature. They had been watching the humans for some time, and they were not as impressed by the Unity's peaceful display as the Talar had. Bindot, the Velzari representative, a tall being with intricate, glowing patterns running across their skin, had been following the Unity's movements closely. The Velzari were known for their shrewdness, and they viewed the galaxy as a chessboard where only the strongest and most unstrategic players could survive. When Carter finally made contact with the Velzari, the representative was far more direct. "Humanity's presence is growing, and we find that concerning," the Velzari ambassador said coldly. "You may claim peace, but we know your species' true nature. The galaxy is not a place for naive gestures. It is a place for power." Carter's heart sank. The Velzari were not as willing to give humanity a chance as the Talar had been. They saw humanity's rise not as a blessing, but as a threat. The ambassador continued, "We will watch you, human. Do not mistake our silence for agreement. Your actions will determine whether you are a friend or a foe." Carter was left with a chilling realization. The Velzari would not be as easily convinced as the Talar. Humanity was being watched. The choices they made in the coming days would determine their place in the galaxy. As the Unity continued its journey, Carter knew one thing for certain. Peace was not going to come easily. With every step they took, the stakes were rising higher. The stars outside the Unity shimmered brightly as the ship moved through the void of space. General Carter stood on the bridge, gazing at the holographic map in front of him. The journey had taken them farther than they had ever imagined. Humanity was now reaching deeper into the galaxy, forging alliances with those who were willing to trust them, but facing resistance from those who were not. As Carter looked at the map, his thoughts turned to the latest meeting with the Velzari. The encounter had not gone as he had hoped. The Velzari had made it clear that they did not trust humanity and would not be quick to offer cooperation. Carter knew that the Velzari were not the only ones watching humanity's every move. As their influence spread, more and more species were beginning to take notice, but not all of them were interested in peaceful relations. The news of humanity's growing presence reached the Galactic Council. The Council, already divided, found themselves in a state of confusion. Some members had begun to express concern that the humans were expanding too quickly, that their peaceful intentions were nothing more than a facade for future conquest. Others, however, continued to argue that the humans were simply misunderstood, that their actions were driven by a desire for peace and cooperation. It was at this critical moment that the Taikari, the powerful and militaristic species, made their move. The Taikari had long been suspicious of humanity. They had watched as humans formed alliances with species like the Ander and the Char, and their unease had only grown. The Taikari had long believed that strength and dominance were the keys to peace in the galaxy, and they had little patience for those who did not share that view. As they had warned the Galactic Council months ago, humanity was a threat that could not be ignored. It began with a message to the Council. The Taikari representative, a towering figure with a fierce gaze, appeared before the Council's holographic projection. His voice was filled with cold authority. "The humans have betrayed us," the Taikari ambassador declared. "We trusted them, and they have turned on us. We asked for their assistance, and instead they destroyed our fleet. They have shown their true nature. The time for diplomacy is over." The council members were shocked. The Taikari had always been a powerful force in the galaxy, and their word carried weight. The accusations against humanity were serious, and the council could not ignore them. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" Ildren, the council's president, asked, his voice calm but filled with concern. "The time for negotiation has passed," the Taikari representative said coldly. "Must prepare for war. We must unite and strike before humanity grows any stronger." The room fell into stunned silence. The thought of war against humanity was a terrifying prospect, but the Taikari's words had struck a nerve. The council members looked at each other, each unsure of how to respond. Some were quick to agree, believing that the Taikari's warning was justified. Others, however, hesitated. They remembered the promises of peace made by the humans and the potential for a brighter future. "We cannot make a decision like this in haste," Ildren said, trying to calm the room. "We must gather more information. We cannot act based on one side of the story." But it was too late. The Taikari had already made up their minds. They had chosen to take matters into their own hands. Across the galaxy, the Taikari began to mobilize their forces, preparing for war. Their fleet was powerful, their ships massive and heavily armed. They were determined to stop humanity before they could grow any stronger. The Taikari believed that the only way to secure peace was through domination, and they would not allow humanity to stand in their way. As the Taikari prepared for battle, humanity found itself caught in the middle of a growing conflict. General Carter had no idea what was happening behind the scenes, but he could sense the tension in the air. The Unity was called to a new meeting with the Galactic Council, but this time things were different. The once welcoming council had become divided and tense. When Carter arrived at the council's chamber, he could feel the weight of the room. Representatives from various species were seated, their faces tense, their eyes filled with suspicion. Ildren stood at the head of the table, his expression somber. "General Carter," Ildren said, his voice calm but firm, "we have received troubling reports. The Taikari have accused humanity of betrayal. They say that you destroyed their fleet. Is this true?" Carter's heart sank. The Taikari had always been a species of power and strength, and if they had truly turned against humanity, the The consequences would be dire. "I don't know what the Taikari are referring to," Carter said, his voice steady. "We've had no intention of starting a war. They've always sought peace." "Then explain why the Taikari's fleet was destroyed," the Askari representative demanded, his voice sharp. "They say it was humanity's doing. What is the truth?" Carter felt the eyes of the entire council on him. He knew that this moment would define humanity's place in the galaxy. If the council believed the Taikari's accusations, it could mean war. If they believed humanity's side, they might still have a chance for peace. "There was no betrayal," Carter said, his voice firm. "We were caught in a conflict we had no part in. The Taikari's own actions led to the destruction of their fleet. We didn't fire a shot." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged looks, unsure of what to believe. Ildren took a deep breath and stood, addressing the council. "We cannot let this situation escalate," Ildren said. "We must investigate the matter thoroughly before making any decisions. Humanity must not be blamed for something they did not do, but the damage had already been done. The Taikari had made their decision. They had turned their back on the council and humanity, and war seemed inevitable. As the Unity left the council chamber, Carter knew that things had changed. The peace humanity had sought was slipping further away with every passing day. Galaxy was on the brink of war, and humanity had become the catalyst. In the coming days, Carter and his crew would learn that the Taikari's warning was only the beginning. More factions would rise, and the galaxy would be forever altered. Humanity's actions would shape the future, but so would the actions of those who had underestimated them. The council had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's potential, and now the consequences would be felt across the stars. The tension in the galaxy was palpable. After the accusations made by the Taikari, many races began to question humanity's true intentions. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of diplomacy, had become a battleground for debates, accusations, and growing fears. General Carter stood at the center of it all, trying to keep his resolve while the galaxy teetered on the brink of war. The Unity drifted through space. It's now heading towards a new system, its mission uncertain. Carter knew that the coming days would be critical for humanity. If the Council failed to find a solution, the result would be catastrophic. The Taikari had already mobilized their forces, and rumors of other species planning to join them began to spread. It was clear that the galaxy was preparing for a showdown. "We can't afford to stay quiet anymore," Carter said, pacing the bridge. "The Council must act, and we have to make sure they understand that humanity is not a threat." Lieutenant Daniels, standing by the communications console, turned to him. "But General, the Taikari have already made their move. They've allied with others, and the Velzari are watching us. If this escalates, we could be fighting on multiple fronts." Carter nodded. He had been expecting this. The galaxy's many factions had always been at odds, but now, with the Taikari leading the charge, the stakes had grown much higher. He knew that diplomacy had failed. The time for talk was over. "We need to take action," Carter said, his voice steady but firm. "We can't just wait for the Council to make decisions. It's up to us now to show the galaxy who we really are." The decision was made. Carter would send a message to the Taikari, demanding a meeting to discuss the allegations and bring the matter to a resolution. He knew it wouldn't be easy, especially with the Taikari's military might already poised for war, but humanity had to stand firm. They had to show that they were not just a species to be feared, but one that could stand strong, even in the face of such adversity. As the message was sent, the Unity moved closer to the Taikari system. Carter's mind raced with thoughts of what might happen next. The galaxy had been on the verge of peace, but now it seemed like the very fabric of that peace was unraveling. The Taikari, the Velzari, the Charthi species were not ones to easily forgive and forget. Yet Carter had to hope that reason would prevail. After all, humanity had always been resourceful and quick to adapt. If the galaxy was going to learn anything about them, it would be that they would not back down without a fight. The hours dragged on as they waited for a response. Finally, the communication system buzzed, signaling a response. Carter, standing at the helm, gave a quick nod to Lieutenant Daniels. "Put it through." The image of the Taikari ambassador appeared on the screen. His eyes, glowing with intensity, stared directly at Carter. The ambassador's massive frame seemed even larger as he spoke, his voice deep and full of authority. "Human General," the ambassador said coldly, "you dare request a meeting after your kind's treachery. Do you truly think you can talk your way out of the destruction you have caused?" Carter took a deep breath, staying calm in the face of the Taikari's anger. "I do not seek to avoid responsibility for what has happened. We have no desire for conflict. But the accusations against us are based on misunderstanding. We are not the enemy you believe us to be. I ask only for the chance to explain." The ambassador's gaze hardened. "Explain? What is there to explain? Your ships attacked ours. You destroyed our fleet. You take us for fools, human?" Carter's eyes never wavered. "Oh, the destruction of the Taikari fleet was not our doing. We were caught in the middle of a conflict between your forces and another species. We acted in self-defense. I will not deny that tensions between our two species are high. But I believe there is a way forward without resorting to war." The room was quiet as the Taikari ambassador processed Carter's words. It was clear that his distrust of humanity ran deep, but Carter's pleas seemed to have made some impact. The ambassador's expression softened, just slightly. "Your words are bold, human," the ambassador said, his voice still filled with suspicion, but also tinged with curiosity. "But actions speak louder than words. What can you offer that proves your sincerity?" Carter's response was simple but powerful. "I offer my fleet. If you are willing to listen, we will stand with you in this conflict. Not as enemies, but as allies. We will help defend the Taikari against any threat. And if you still cannot trust us, we will fight beside you not as conquerors, but as partners in the struggle." For a long moment, the ambassador said nothing, his eyes locked with Carter's, as if weighing his words. Then, with a deep sigh, the Taikari ambassador finally spoke. "We will consider your offer, human, but do not mistake this for forgiveness. If you betray us again, you will face the full wrath of the Taikari. Prepare for the consequences if you fail to deliver." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the crew of the Unity in tense silence. Carter stood in thought for a moment, reflecting on the gravity of what had just happened. The Taikari had agreed to a temporary truce, but their mistrust remained clear. Carter had no illusions about the road ahead. There was still much to be done if humanity was to avoid war. "We've bought some time," Carter said, turning to Lieutenant Daniels. "But this is just the beginning. We need to rally support from the Council. We need every ally we can find." The Unity set course for the next system. It was clear that humanity was at a crossroads. They could either unite with the galaxy to stand against the Taikari, or they could fight alone. The decision was no longer in the Council's hands. It was up to humanity to prove their worth, to show the galaxy that they could be trusted. The stakes were higher than ever, and every move they made would determine their future. The stars outside the Unity were silent, a sea of cold, distant lights in the vastness of space. Yet within the walls of the ship, a storm was brewing. General Carter stood at the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the endless darkness. The weight of the galaxy's future seemed to press down on him with each passing second. The Taikari, once allies, had become formidable adversaries. Humanity had done everything it could to avoid war, but their attempts to prove their peaceful intentions had failed to fully convince the galaxy. The Taikari had made their terms clear. Humanity was to prove their worth or face the consequences. And in the background, rumors of other factions joining the Taikari began to spread. On the bridge, Lieutenant Daniels was at her station, typing rapidly as new reports flooded in. "General, the Velzari have issued a statement. They claim they will support the Taikari in case of conflict. The Char are considering their position as well." Carter sighed. "I thought as much. We've been trying to buy time, but it's running out." His voice was low, almost resigned. "If the Taikari, Velzari, and Char unite against us, we'll be facing an all-out war, and with our limited resources, we might not survive it." "What are we going to do, General?" Daniels asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Carter turned to face her. "We can't keep running from this. We We need to show the galaxy that humanity is more than just a threat. We need to prove that we are capable of not only surviving, but thriving in this galaxy, that we can be trusted, and that our strength is in our ability to unite, not to conquer. Just as the words left his mouth, a new message appeared on the screen. It was from the Galactic Council. "Put it through," Carter ordered, his tone shifting to one of caution. "Ildren." The president of the council appeared on the screen. His face was grave, and his usual calm demeanor seemed to have been replaced by a sense of urgency. "General Carter," Ildren began, "the council has deliberated, and we have come to a difficult decision. While there are still factions that believe in humanity's potential for peace, the growing distrust has made it clear that action must be taken." Carter's heart sank. He had known the council's decision wouldn't be easy, but this was different. Ildren paused for a moment, as though weighing his next words. "We have decided to authorize a united front against the Taikari, the Velzari, and the Char. We will provide support for any species that stands against humanity's rise. And we will stand together in defense of the galaxy," Ildren continued. Carter felt the weight of the words crash down on him. The council had decided to abandon humanity in favor of the greater galactic peace. His mind raced. He had tried to avoid this moment, to find a way to unite the galaxy peacefully. But now, the galaxy had chosen its side, and it wasn't with humanity. "The council has decided to stand with the Taikari," Ildren said. "We are sorry, General, but humanity has proven to be too dangerous to be trusted. You will have to fight for your survival. We cannot protect you any longer." The message ended abruptly. Carter stood in silence, his thoughts a whirlwind. This was it. The galaxy had turned against humanity. He had been trying so hard to avoid this outcome, but now it was clear. War was inevitable. The council, the very body that had once offered humanity a chance, had now turned its back on them. The stakes had been raised, and the galaxy's decision was final. General Lieutenant Daniels said softly, breaking the silence, "What do we do now?" Carter took a deep breath. "Now, we do what humanity does best. We fight. We stand together, not just as a species, but as a force that cannot be defeated. We will show the galaxy that we will not go down without a fight. We'll show them that humanity is more than just a threat. We are a force that can bring change, not through war, but through strength and resolve." He turned to face the rest of the crew, his eyes filled with determination. "We will need to rally every ally we have. We may not have the support of the council, but we have our strength, our resourcefulness, and our unity. We will prove to the galaxy that humanity is a force that deserves to be reckoned with." The crew of the Unity looked to their leader, their faces a mix of fear and hope. They knew that this would not be an easy fight, but they also knew that they had no choice. The galaxy had forced their hand. They would have to face the consequences of the council's decision, but they would not go down without a fight. As the ship continued its journey toward the heart of the galaxy, Carter knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. The galaxy was divided, and humanity was now standing at the center of a growing storm. But he also knew that in times of darkness, humanity had always found a way to rise. "We will not be silenced," Carter whispered to himself, as if to remind himself of the truth. "We will not be defeated." The Unity sailed through the stars, the crew united in their resolve. The fate of humanity now rested in their hands. They would fight for their survival, but they would also fight for the chance to prove to the galaxy that they belonged. Humanity had been underestimated, but now they had a chance to show their true strength. The council's decision had been made. The galaxy had chosen its path. But humanity would choose theirs, and they would fight for it, no matter the cost.